Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are talking about my first year of knitting. So I started knitting at the end of 2024 and 2025 was my first full year of knitting. I was knitting consistently throughout the year and I have been doing quarterly knitting or crafting wrap-ups throughout the year, which was very fun. I'm probably going to continue that on into 2026. But I wanted to talk about my year as a whole, everything that I knit, some superlatives, my favorite, least favorite, lessons learned about myself, about knitting, about all of this. So let's get into it. I am going to try and keep this as brief as I can, but I feel like this is going to be a long video because I got lots to say. However, for more details about the individual items that I knit and the patterns and the yarns and all of that, I'm going to direct you to my quarterly crafting wrap-ups, which I'll link in the description. And each of those I have much more detail, but I'm going to keep this video from being super long and not repeating myself, we're going to go through things pretty quickly. So we're going to start with just a wrap-up of everything that I knit in 2025. I am going to include the one or two items that I made at the very end of 2024 just because those are part of my first year of knitting. So the very first thing that I made, that was my first finished object, which I honestly find the term finished object just an awkward thing to say, but it's the terminology that the knitting community uses. I feel like it sounds funny, but my first finished object that was more than just a test swatch was this hat. But this is just a hat that I found a pattern for on YouTube. I could just follow a tutorial. I made this mostly just because I was waiting for the yarn for my first large project to come in the mail. And I just wanted to get started, and so I just made this little knit hat. It's actually kind of oversized. It's quite chunky and a little bit large, but I like an oversized hat. I think that they look better on me than a really tight hat. I think I look funny when I have a really tight knit hat. So I do wear this and it is very comfortable. And I like the yarn. It's just some a Woolies yarn that I think I had gotten at Michael's years ago. I was probably going to crochet a hat and I just never got around to it. So this was the first thing that I made. The second thing that I made was also my first sweater. And so this is the first sweater that I made. This is, I think it's called the warm-up sweater. The reason I picked this as my first sweater to make was because there's a full step-by-step tutorial that I found on YouTube, and then there was a companion knitting pattern, so I could watch the tutorial and read the pattern along with it, and I really liked that because it helped me to learn how to read a pattern and understand abbreviations and just the way that the patterns are constructed. And so it was really helpful to be able to have a really clear step-by-step tutorial, showed you exactly what to do, and then also be able to read the pattern along with it. So this, I think, was a good place to start, but I did also learn a lot of things about sizing in particular, although part of that is because I have since discovered this yarn. I used the Drops Air, which is the recommended yarn. This yarn stretches like crazy. So I did make a fairly large size, but also it stretched so much that it became so oversized, more than I was anticipating. The next thing that I completed was the Birch Sweater. So this is supposed to be made in a yarn that makes it look like birch bark, but I obviously did it in a very bright green. Really this was the sweater of my dreams, that I was I want a really vibrant leaf green. It took me a long time to find the exact green that I wanted, and I had to test a bunch of different yarns, but I love this. This is the Malabrigo, I think Dos Tierras, in the color Lettuce, and it just is such a beautiful, vibrant green, and I think it's a green that looks nice on me. And this is one that I actually changed it, so this is actually a crew neck that I then made a little detachable cowl that I can use like it is a like it's a turtleneck. But I really love how this one turned out, and I do wear it a lot. I like that the sleeves are very wide and they have this big cuff. And this one I made some adjustments to the size and construction of it, some small adjustments, but still it felt very ambitious at the time as my third knitting project ever and my second sweater, to just be like, I can add in some German short rows, I'll do a 2x1 ribbing instead of a 1x1 ribbing, like, you know, I'll do the sizing a little bit differently and, like, you know, split for sleeves in a different place than it says, and like, you know, it felt very ambitious at the time, but it turned out very well in my opinion, and I really like this one. After that, I did also during that time make a few test socks. So I don't have a single like pair of socks, I just have 3 individual mismatched test socks, but they are all in different yarn weights, they are all different constructions, because I was kind of testing out different types of sock constructions. So this one is in sock yarn that is fingering weight, and is a reinforced heel flap construction. This one is, I believe, in a sport weight yarn, and this is an afterthought heel construction. And this one is, I think, actually in like a worsted weight, and this is a short rows construction. So I got to test out a few different kinds of sock constructions, and also discovering that I don't love making socks. My next completed project is the Gondola Sweater, and this one was my first color work, and I do feel like this was a good place to start for color work, because it is very simple, it is pretty easy to memorize, you're just making these little diamonds, so even if you kind of lose your place, it's really easy to figure out where you are. I found the pattern really easy to follow. I did make small alterations to it, like I added these last little designs here, just to kind of extend the color work down the body, but I really like how this turned out, and I think it was a really good place to start for color work. After that, my next project was the Stripe Hype sweater, and I did not do this stripes all over. I only put stripes on the sleeve, and I also changed it that I did 2 different widths of stripes, but this is my first drop shoulder sweater, so that was exciting to try a new construction, although I think that I probably would make this in a different size next time. Also, this is made with an alpaca yarn, and I don't know if I really realized how much alpaca stretches. However, I think that it stretched a lot horizontally, and I wish that it had stretched more vertically. I think that it just looks too boxy, and if it was going to be so wide, I would have liked it to be longer. After that, the next project that I completed was the field sweater. This was my first cable design, which when I started it, I knew that obviously it has this like texture. I didn't fully realize that it involved cabling techniques, but I found the pattern really well written, really easy to follow. The pattern itself, you know, is complex in that like each row is really different. You have to be really precise about your counting so everything lines up, otherwise the design just won't look like anything. But for a first cabling project, it actually went surprisingly well, but it truly took my whole brain to do this yoke, because it was like, it just took a lot more concentration than some of the other things that I had made. The next project that I finished was the Braidy Loop sweater by Other Loops, which is the sweater I'm wearing right now. And so this one, what I loved about it is that it has these cables that go across the back and then down the sleeves. It has this really nice in pattern decrease, and this sweater was maybe one of the more frustrating ones to make. I found the pattern very frustrating to use, but I love the end result. I would consider making this again in the future because I love this design, but it won't be for a while because I know it's kind of annoying to make. But it also has a lot of really nice little details to it, like the in pattern decreases and also some techniques that I will definitely be carrying with me into future projects. So for that, I definitely appreciate having made this sweater. I also do love the sweater, and like the design, it just is lovely. And then the last item that I finished in 2025 was actually a dog sweater. So this is, I think it's the Lucky Dog sweater that I made for my dog Merlin. It has a little turtleneck, which I just think is adorable, and he looks very handsome in a dark green. I think he is an autumn color palette because honestly, like, he looks great in an autumn dark green and in a burgundy, so those autumnal colors are really looking good against his fur. This one I did have to make some changes to like make it fit him properly, so that it would actually cover more of his body and keep him warm. But there are also some things that I really liked about this, particularly that it has some short rows in the front to raise the front so it would cover his chest and not like pull down. But he has been wearing this and enjoying it, and it's been keeping him toasty warm, although he can't wear it when he plays with his friends because I am worried about, you know, someone catching a nail or something on this and pulling it. All right, so let's get into some superlatives for the things that I knit this year. For my quickest knit, technically it is this hat. I made it in one evening. It is a small item that I was making with chunky yarn on large needles, so it was a very quick knit. But my fastest sweater, I think, would probably be the field sweater, which is kind of funny because it is one of the more complicated things that I made, but I think one of the reasons it was such a quick knit is, for one thing, this is a more fitted size. I didn't make it oversized, and so it just was like a smaller circumference. Also, the fact that this was more complex actually made me do it faster because it was like really interesting. And I happened to be knitting this when I was sick at one point and I didn't have a lot else to do, so I just sat around and knit, and I ended up giving myself tennis elbow and I had to then take a break for like a month from knitting. But this is probably my quickest sweater, which took me, I believe, 3 weeks. My longest knit was the Birch Sweater, and that is for a few reasons. One is that this yarn is probably closer to a sport weight than a DK. So it is very small. I was knitting very tight in order to get more even looking stitches with this yarn. And then also, I think the biggest impact was because I had to keep redoing parts because there was so much color variation in my skeins of yarn. I did have yarn from 2 different dye lots, but even within a single dye lot, there was a lot of variation in how dark or bright and vibrant the greens were. And so to mitigate that, I did my best to, you know, alternate skeins and kind of create a gradient and tried to plan out like where the brightest and lightest colors were and where the darkest of the green was going to be. But it did mean that I frequently, I think I actually completely restarted this at one point because I realized that the color variation was going to be much more noticeable than I had originally thought. So I restarted the whole thing, and then also I just ripped back and redid so many parts of this to try and get a smoother gradient transition. So this took me 3 months to finish this single sweater. My most worn sweater is probably the warm-up sweater, which was my very first. And that's maybe a little surprising to me just because when I first finished this, I was kind of like, eh, about it. Like, I was really proud of it, really happy that I was like, I finished an entire sweater. It is a wearable sweater, but it just wasn't quite what I wanted. The color of the yarn was kind of different than what I had been anticipating, but I decided not to try and like return it and get a new one. And also it just like ended up being so much more oversized than I had anticipated. It just didn't fit the way that I thought it was going to. But over the course of the year, this is probably the one I wear the most. Now, that is probably because it is my like biggest, comfiest, most oversized sweater. And so this is the one that I throw on like to go walk Merlin. Like, half the time if I'm taking Merlin for a walk and it's cold outside, I will put this on because it is very light but very warm, and it's just like really comfortable. And maybe a little bit because it's not my favorite, I don't mind like wearing this to walk the dog. I'm not like worried about it. It's not like a precious sweater, but it is probably my most worn. However, I also will say that this yarn, I don't know how well you can see this, but it has pilled quite a bit. I need to depill it, but I have discovered that this yarn pills quite a bit. My favorite sweater, and probably my second most worn, is the Birch Sweater. And a lot of that is, I mean, I do love the shape of this sweater, the shape of the sleeves. I love that it has this detachable turtleneck, but a lot of it is also just because I love this green. It is such a pretty green. And I think it's also a green that looks nice on me, so it is a sweater that I wear frequently, and especially times where I just am like, I want to look nice, and I just feel like I look good when I wear this color. So this is probably my second most worn, but this is one that is like a precious sweater that I wear when I'm like going out of the house and I want to look nice. But this one really has not pilled at all. It is a really, like, this yarn was very annoying to work with. It was very frustrating because it kept like twisting in a weird way, and I had to knit really tightly in order to keep it from looking really uneven. But it makes this really nice, like, dense, thick fabric, and I have found that it does a really good job of like being warm, but also I don't overheat really easily in this, and I am someone who gets hot easily, so that is something I have to worry about. But I just feel like this like regulates temperature surprisingly well. So it is both like comfortable and very pretty. So definitely my favorite thing that I have knit, and my most worn that is not just most worn because I like just throw it on. The sweater that I am the most proud of, other than my first sweater just because I was proud that I made it, but the one I'm most proud of is probably the field sweater, because I mean, I love how this design looks and how it came out. It was my first cabling project, and it was something that I did, like, it was difficult but not insurmountable. I really felt like I was learning something new, and it was something that took a lot of focus and concentration and a lot of effort to like understand what I was supposed to be doing. And for me, this was a very complex knit, as a new knitter, and so this is probably the one I am the most proud of. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, my least favorite is probably the stripe hype sweater for a variety of reasons. One is just, as I said, this came out very boxy, and I think that is partially, like, the design is boxy, but I don't mind like a boxy oversized fit. if it was longer. I think I made this too short, and then I think it stretched a lot. And so maybe I would make this in a smaller size. Maybe I would make it a little bit longer. And also, I don't love the striped sleeves. I thought that it was gonna look really cute to have like the solid body with the striped sleeves. I just don't like it, and I think it's something that maybe could look good on somebody else, but I never want to wear this. So honestly, at some point I might frog this and remake something with it, because I like this light green color, and I would use this yarn for something else, but I just never wear this sweater, so I feel like I should use it. I should like get the yarn back and reuse it for something else. So let's get into some things that I learned. So some things that I learned about myself as a knitter. For one thing, I've discovered that I think I am probably a somewhat tight knitter, but not super tight, but I would say maybe like a medium tight knitter, which works out well in general because I like a thicker, denser weave. And so a lot of times I also discovered that I prefer to size up the recommended yarn weight, or size down the needles, but more often I'm sizing up the yarn to meet gauge. But I like to have a thicker yarn on smaller than recommended needles, because it gets like a denser weave. I like the way that it feels and the way it sits, and I just think that it looks and feels more high quality to have that density. Also, my stitches often look more even the tighter the knit is. Also, from doing both color work and some cabling, what I have discovered is that doing straight stockinette with no color work, no cable, no texture, no nothing is a little bit boring. I am not a knitter who wants to like totally zone out and just like knit. I want something that engages my brain. I like to be feeling like I'm learning something or doing something. Like I like a degree of concentration. And so, you know, sometimes it's nice to have a little break and just do some straight stockinette, but I really like having something else going on. I have discovered that I think for me, color work is kind of the perfect like happy medium for what I enjoy doing. Cabling, I do not enjoy the process of cabling that much. I find it a little bit annoying, and also it takes more concentration than I necessarily want to focus on, especially if it is a very involved cabling project like the field sweater. This one took a little bit less concentration because it was a more simple and spread out cable design, but even so, I just don't love cabling. But color work is kind of the perfect happy medium for me for the amount of like focus and effort that it takes to do to keep me engaged and have something to focus on, but not so much focus or so like fiddly that it becomes frustrating. However, I also have discovered, and maybe I should have realized this from looking at my wardrobe, that I don't know if I'm going to wear a lot of color work stuff. Like I want to do a lot of color work because it's very fun, but I'm not somebody who necessarily wears a lot of patterned clothing or things that have like pictures or designs on them. I tend to be much more of just like a solid color kind of person, and I really love the look of things that are a solid color but have like a texture or a cable to them. So in that way, I'm not super well matched with my preferences, because I love doing color work, but it's not necessarily my favorite thing to wear, and I find cables annoying, but I like wearing things with cables. Some things that I have noticed about the way people talk about knitting in the online knitting community and myself is, for one thing, I do not experience Sleeve Island, at least not so far, knock on wood. Hopefully I never do. But I hear so many people talk about Sleeve Island and how they just get stuck there, and I'm like, that is not my experience. I like doing the sleeves because sleeves go so fast. They are a small circumference, so you're just like zooming along. You can finish a sleeve like that. I get really tired of doing the body, especially when, you know, the yoke has cabling or color work, and then you get to the body and it's just plain stockinette, and I'm just like, this is taking forever because it's so boring, and also it's such a wider circumference that it just feels like it takes a really long time. So my method, or my like kind of the order that I have started to do things in is, you know, I'll do the yoke, split for sleeves, and then go about halfway through the body. And then whenever I kind of run out of whatever ball of yarn I'm using, I put the body on hold, knit each of the sleeves, and then go back and finish the body, because I usually need a break from doing the body, and doing the sleeves is usually much more fun because it goes so quick. I think something else that has maybe been influenced by kind of my crafting background coming from sewing is that I really don't mind like redoing things, ripping back and redoing and fixing things. And part of that maybe is just a personality trait of mine, that I am just like, you know, I want it to be the way I want it to be, so if I have to redo it, that's okay. But a lot of why it doesn't frustrate me too much is because it's so easy to fix things. It's so easy to redo things. Coming from sewing, where it is much harder, I think, to fix mistakes, it just, like, knitting just feels so easy to fix a mistake, because in sewing, especially if you have cut fabric, like, once you cut that fabric, a lot of times there's no way to fix it. That fabric is cut, you can't redo it. So either you need more fabric or you're out of luck. And so, like, trying to fix a mistake in sewing can feel so much more frustrating if it is a mistake where you're like, I truly cannot fix this if I don't have more fabric, or I have to waste more of my fabric to get this done. Whereas with knitting, in most cases, you can just rip back that yarn and reuse it again and again and again, and it's not a big deal. You're not like out of materials. And so I think that I feel a lot more freedom in my ability to fix mistakes, and I have a lot more like a lot less frustration because everything feels so fixable. And then let's talk about just some lessons learned. I guess those were also kind of things I learned, but some lessons learned. One is, I think that I need to make sure, like, this is something I already knew, but also didn't always follow. I need to make sure that I am using colors that I think look good on me, because there are some projects that I made that I like the colors and I like the way that they look for that project, but I don't necessarily like the way the colors look on me, and so I don't wear them that much. For example, the field sweater. I like this color, and I think that this color is the perfect type of color for this sweater. It is a very wheaty kind of color. However, I don't feel like this is a great color on me, and so I don't wear this that much. Also, it feels very seasonal. I feel like this is a fall sweater very specifically. But another example is like the Gondola Sweater. I love how this turned out. I think this color combination is beautiful. Like, I based this on a picture that I saw because I was so obsessed with how that black and gold diamond sweater looked. But I don't really wear these colors that much. These just aren't colors that I frequently wear in my wardrobe. They aren't necessarily colors that I feel like I look great in. I don't think I look bad, but they aren't necessarily colors that I feel like, oh, I look really good in this color. Whereas some of the other ones, like this sweater, also really grew on me because I feel like this is a color that looks nice on me. I talked about how this green I think is a really good green for me, and even this really like golden brown, I feel like this is a nice color on me, and those are probably my 3 most worn sweaters. So this is a thing that I'm like, Theoretically, I know that I should be making sweaters for myself in colors that I like and I feel like look good on me because I'm more likely to wear them. But I didn't necessarily consistently follow that, that concept. I also learned for myself for sizing, because sizing was a big thing that I have been learning this year. I don't think I've got it perfectly, but I have more so figured out how to get the sizing right for myself as I am making sweaters, and how to anticipate, you know, how much ease things are going to have. But I have learned that it is better for me to use an upper chest measurement as opposed to a measurement at the fullest point of my bust, which I think a lot of people who have a fuller bust have said, and that is a thing that I learned this year, so I don't end up with way oversized sweaters when I don't want that look. I also have learned about you know, that sometimes I have to end the yoke earlier than the pattern calls for, because depending on how they do their size grading, a lot of times you end up with the armpits like down at my waist. So I have to be really conscious of like how are the increases going and where I am splitting for sleeves. I also learned what is my favorite sock construction, which I have discovered is an afterthought heel. I find the other two very annoying to do, and also I don't love the look of either of the heel flap or the short rows. I really like both the look and the process of making an afterthought heel. So if I do ever decide to make an actual pair of socks, now I know. So in the future, I will be making more things that are colors that I think look good on me, but also based on, you know, what I actually wore this year. I think that I want to make more like big oversized sweaters. I want just a couple of those because the warm-up sweater was my most worn sweater, so clearly there is a place in my wardrobe for those sweaters that are just big, comfy, you throw them on like a sweatshirt, that, you know, they're quick and easy to make, but they are so versatile and useful. So I might try some new patterns just to try different, you know, patterns and constructions for an oversized sweater, but I want some more of those like big, comfy, oversized sweaters. I also want to make some more like fun and interesting sweaters. I do really want to do more color work, and I really want to try and find some color work designs that are ones I would genuinely wear. I don't want to make things just for the sake of making them. I want to make stuff I will actually wear, but I also want to do stuff that is like fun and interesting. I don't think I am the type of person, the type of knitter that's like, I want really simple basics. I want to make stuff that I couldn't find anywhere else. Things that are like fun colors, things that are interesting designs. So I think that I have kind of the duality, the two extremes, that I'm like, I want to do some like fun, quirky, cool color work or textured things. And I also want to do some really basic, big, comfy, oversized, like sweatshirt style sweaters. And the last thing I will touch on is just in terms of tools. I have discovered that my favorite knitting needles are the Knit Pro wooden circular needles. I have an interchangeable set that I really like. I like the color ginger. I just like that they're very natural brown color, but they have more fun colors too. But the Knit Pro wooden needles are kind of the perfect happy medium for me in terms of a knitting needle, because I have tried some metal needles and I do not like how slippy they are. I just feel like I lose stitches that way. Stuff slides off and I lose things, and I just find it harder to grip them and to like really get a rhythm going. But I also tried some Licca needles that were also wood, and those ones are a little more grippy. They have more texture to them, and they also have a bit of a duller point to them. And so those are not my favorite because I wanted something a little more pointy and a little more slippy than those. And so the Knit Pro are kind of the perfect happy medium for me. They are not the pointiest, but they are more pointy than the Licca needles, and they also are more smooth than the Licca needles, but not as smooth and slippy as metal needles. So they're kind of the perfect needle for me of what I have tried. I have not extensively tried different brands of needles, but so far those are definitely my favorites, and they've been working really well for me. So that is my wrap up of my first full year of knitting. I probably talked forever. I think this is going to be a really long video, so if you stuck with me, thank you. I hope you enjoyed. I have really been loving getting into knitting this year, and I have big plans for 2026 knitting, but I will keep you posted. I am planning to still do my quarterly crafting wrap-ups, so you will be hearing more about my knitting throughout 2026. But let me know a superlative for something that you made in 2026. Like, what is your favorite, least favorite, the thing that took you the longest to make? Please let me know in the comments. But thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.